Okay, guys. Well, look, I have been watching the political stage show over the last week or so, and I am watching an escalation in the war drums, particularly in regards to the Trump administration and Venezuela. Now, it seems that the Trump administration are now declaring a victory over ISIS, and they are claiming that they are going to now withdraw from Syria because they have achieved their results in eradicating these terrorists. And so it seems now that as they're withdrawing from Syria, they're now focused on a new enemy, and that enemy is suddenly the Venezuelan regime. Now, it's not that Maduro has suddenly become a dictator over the last few weeks. Maduro has been a dictator for years, and the Venezuelan people have been suffering under his government for years. So it's quite perplexing that suddenly the Trump administration would see this as a problem that needs to be fixed now, when they've had all of these previous years in which they could have done something to help the Venezuelans, particularly in providing aid, which now we're seeing Trump make this huge, big proclamation to everybody about, thumping his chest, how the US government are providing the Venezuelan people aid because he cares so much. And so we are seeing that they are playing out some type of strategic maneuver here with Venezuela. And this also fits into the way the Jesuit actually work, because as we're focused on all of these other staged conflicts all around the world, because it's all a political stage show, it's all a script, when we're looking to North Korea and we're thinking that perhaps this could become the next conflict, or perhaps Iran could be the next conflict, suddenly out of nowhere we see this issue with Venezuela appear on the radar, and we suddenly start seeing that the war drums begin beating loudly, and it's all about Venezuela and helping the Venezuelan people. And it's all about separating the Venezuelan people from their oil, even though the rabbit hole goes much deeper than that. On the surface, that is what it really is about when they are playing out their script, because they're not going to give you the actual truth behind what they're doing. They're only going to reveal subplots to you, and they're going to allow you to see what you want to see. And so most people know that the US regime spread democracy to countries that have a lot of wealth when it comes to their resources, which is why Trump recently made the statement about Syria that it had no vast wealth and that it was just sand and death. And so basically what he was saying is that it's not worth saving the people of Syria because really there's nothing in it for us. And this isn't the same when it comes to Venezuela, because there is something in it for the Trump regime. And, you know, Trump has already said that in regards to Iraq, that the Iraq people will have to actually thank the US for spreading all of this democracy and saving them from Saddam Hussein by repaying them in oil. And to the victor go the spoils. That is exactly what he said. So that's his mentality, okay? So anyway, I found it interesting when I was listening to his speech this morning about Venezuela. So I will just play you this part of his speech because it led me on to some other connections that I thought that you might find interesting as well. So let's listen to Trump and his speech about Venezuela.
That they have stolen. Incredibly, there are members of the Venezuelan military still barely supporting this failed dictatorship. They are risking their future. They are risking their lives and Venezuela's future for a man controlled by the Cuban military and protected by a private army of Cuban soldiers.
Now that was the part I wanted you to hear. If you couldn't quite hear it, he said that Maduro is being protected by the Cuban military, and basically he is a puppet of Cuba. And so I found that really interesting. And I found it even more interesting when I saw this article on AP, where it was basically relaying information of how Haitians are starting to get very aggravated, and there have been violent protests because suddenly in the last 2 weeks everything has doubled. Everything has doubled, and they can no longer afford to live. Basically the fuel has doubled, phone cards have doubled, basic goods, pretty much everything has doubled. And so the people of Haiti are really sick and tired of all of the corruption, and so they have started violently protesting about all of this corruption and how the cost of living is just beyond their reach now. They can't even basically just survive because it's just so expensive. And I thought this was really interesting too, because this has only just happened in the last couple of weeks. Just out of nowhere in the last couple of weeks, the government has decided to increase the price of everything. So they've basically wanted to make life harder for the people of Haiti. And this just happened out of nowhere in the last couple of weeks, and this is going to start causing unrest. This is what we're seeing now. We're seeing unrest in Haiti because of economic changes that were made a couple of weeks ago, and they are purposely making life harder for the people of Haiti and causing this unrest within the people, within the society of Haiti. And these protests are getting violent because people are hungry. You know, people can't survive without food and water and fuel, and they're being deprived of these basic necessities of life. Now, I don't see the Trump administration making any statements about how socialism is behind everything that is happening in Haiti now, and that they're going to go and drop all of these plane loads of aid over in Haiti. And probably this is because Haiti has no vast wealth, as Trump puts it. But what I found even more interesting was when I connected the statement that he made about Maduro being a Cuban puppet with Haiti, because I actually went and had a look at the geography of the area, and I saw that Haiti is right next to Cuba. And so I found that quite interesting. And what I found even more interesting was that when we have a look at the solar eclipse that happened at the beginning of 2019, so basically last month, we had a solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse, a blood moon eclipse, blood moon eclipse. I've got a lot to try and put out here, so forgive me if I make some mistakes and I don't get it all out as absolutely accurately as I'm trying. So we have this lunar eclipse, okay, this super moon, okay, super wolf moon, blood moon eclipse. Not going to be another blood moon until 2021. Very long eclipse, and it's only seen in North and South America. But interestingly, the center of this eclipse is right over Cuba. Now, why I find this interesting is because the Aztecs and the Incans and the Mayans, they believed that eclipses could actually be a precursor, be a warning to conflicts coming. Okay, and the same with the ancient Greeks. In fact, I was just doing some research into the Antikythera Mechanism, and it basically is a very sophisticated mechanism that was found in a Roman era shipwreck. I mean, it shouldn't even exist according to mainstream science because it's just so advanced. And basically what this was is a timekeeper, because the ancients, as we know, understood that everything happened in motion. Everything happened in cycles, is what I'm trying to say. And so these cycles repeat themselves and bring about certain events, because everything is basically all about cycles and destiny and fate, and you know, these events happen over and over again because this is the nature of our universe, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so they knew that certain astronomical alignments could be the forewarning to certain events unfolding on our planet. And so it was really interesting that they were very interested in the moon phases with this mechanism. Okay, and it was so accurate. I mean, this mechanism was so accurate to 1 degree in 500 years. I mean, it was mind-blowing that they could actually create such a marvel, and especially as because they weren't supposed to be able to do this according to modern science. And so this is why I look back to the ancients. I'd rather look back to the ancients than peer-reviewed science that is corrupted. You know, most scientists are all about the grants that they're going to get. They're all about following the narrative, following the mainstream establishment of what's approved and what's allowed. And so you really don't find a lot of truth in modern science, okay? All they do is really just quantify our environment and then bring you that information and then theorize about what they think that means, okay? The ancients actually looked at the laws of the universe and weren't following any agenda to hide information, and they knew how important all of these cycles were, and the planets and the movements of the planets helped them understand where we were in the cycle, because we exist in a cycle. We exist in a cycle called the Great Year. This is what modern science hides from us, and we are in the lower ages of that cycle, and things are changing. We are about to move back into the higher ages of this cycle, and it's not something that gets done slowly over a long period of time. It's going to happen very suddenly and very quickly, and there's going to be great upheaval, and not a lot of people are going to survive. And so not a lot of people want to know that truth, because most people are not going to live through the other side of this huge shift. And so that tends to emotionally trigger people, because they're not ready to hear that. They just want to hear about all the sugar-coated stuff, you know, and that we're going to live basically in this futuristic civilization, and Elon Musk is going to take us to Mars in 2 years. You know, basically this is where people's mentality is safe and secure, and so this is what they would rather believe instead of the truth. So I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I'm here to actually bring you knowledge from the ancients and try and fuse that with what's happening now to give us an understanding of what's happening now. And so the Greeks believed that characteristics of an eclipse were related to good or bad omens. So it's not only that an eclipse could bring something good, it's that eclipse could sometimes mean that something not so good was coming. Unfortunately, we've lost the ability to be able to know the difference between eclipses. That knowledge was taken from us, from the Jesuits, who now have locked that up under the Vatican. So all of that information is available if you want to go raid the Vatican. And so if anybody wants to do anything of actual worth to change our world and the way it is at the moment, then let's go raid the Vatican and get back what was ours. And look, nobody's going to do that, because everyone's just happy about sitting on social media and arguing with each other. So we're just going to have to be silent observers and watch everything unfold, and then pretty much try and do the best we can when it's all out of our control and we're trying to somehow understand it all, which is where we're going to be very soon. So I just wanted to show you this about this mechanism, because I just wanted to reiterate to you how important it was to the ancients that we looked at these alignments. These alignments were important to them. They were so important to them that they constructed this mechanism that the establishment scientists today don't even understand how they could possibly know this information and make these types of advanced mechanisms, which are basically like a computer. So when we go and look back at the solar eclipse, okay, we see that there's something called a Serous cycle. Now, the Serous cycle of this solar eclipse that we just had is the Serous cycle 134. And if you go down, you can see all of the other dates that this eclipse is grouped with, because every eclipse is grouped with another eclipse, okay, and they happen in cycles. They're all grouped together, and those cycles are called Serous cycles. This is called Serous cycle 134. So I thought I'd go back and just have a quick look at a few of the other dates where this same group of eclipses have also happened. So I came to 1933. Well, interestingly, what happened in 1933? Well, that was the worst year for the Great Depression, and it was also the year that Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. So pretty important year. A lot of very significant stuff happened in 1933. I also saw that 1969 was another year that this eclipse cycle happened. What happened in 1969? Well, NASA claims that they put the first man on the moon. Okay, whether they really did or not is up for debate. I would like to know how they got through the Van Allen's radiation belt. Unfortunately, nobody has convinced me that they can do this, and so I'm still very doubtful that this event ever occurred, because I can't understand why they haven't been back since 1969. If we're supposedly as advanced as we should be, when you look at all the technology that we now have that we didn't have in 1969, why hasn't that translated to space travel? We've just suddenly stagnated in that area, and there's no good reason why that hasn't happened. And, you know, even when we get the Chinese now sending their so-called lunar rover to the far side of the moon, this is very convenient, because that means nobody can actually use a telescope to actually look at this lander, you know, this rover, lunar lander, whatever they've called it, to see it there. And really, we have the technology to do that. We actually have the technology right now in the telescopes that we possess, that we should be able to focus on the flag and the footsteps. But interestingly enough, we never do. We never get those photos either. But anyway, just wanted to show you, interestingly, that we have another significant event happening in one of those Serous cycle years for 134. Now, lastly, in 1911, let me just check that for you. Let's go back. Sorry, 1915. 1915, we have the Gallipoli Campaign. Okay, now, Americans probably don't think much about the Gallipoli Campaign, but I can tell you in Australia, that is pretty much one of the biggest things that we have here when it is in relation to our armed forces, okay, because it was basically a slaughter. It was a slaughter of Australians at Gallipoli. They were basically cannon fodder. Okay, if you go and have a look at the Gallipoli Campaign, they were basically sent to their deaths, and they knew they were sending them to their deaths. Why Australians aren't completely outraged about what happened to them and how they were treated, I don't know. Australians have always just been cannon fodder for the UK and the US, and continue to be cannon fodder, and will continue to be cannon fodder. And we've got a big target on our backs with China and North Korea, you know, pretty much a big threat to us over here in Australia. And so this is basically the Ottoman Empire that they were trying to reduce and trying to defeat, basically. And the Ottomans had a huge victory in the Gallipoli Campaign, and it resulted in the loss of, you know, lots of Australian troops. And so this is something that is basically commemorated every year. We have a dawn service. People go over to Gallipoli. And so it is really big in Australian military history. It is something that is a cornerstone of what we commemorate when we think to our military servicemen. So that was interesting that that also happened on this Serous Cycle 134. So I just thought that I would bring all of this information to you because I find it interesting that basically this eclipse that we had, this blood moon eclipse, can only be seen in North and South America, and suddenly after this eclipse we're now having all of this escalation in tension in Venezuela, and we're now seeing Trump connect Cuba to this, and suddenly we see Haiti is beginning to descend into chaos and unrest because they've doubled the cost of living, they've doubled the price of food and gas and everything else for these people, and it's causing unrest there too. And Haiti happens to be right under where that little dot is as well, and right next to Cuba. So make of that as you will. I don't believe in coincidences. Neither did the ancient Greeks, neither did the ancient Egyptians, because Hermetic law tells us that there is no such thing as chance, that everything is basically already predestined. I mean, it's hard for anybody to grasp that when you don't actually understand universal law to the depth that you are required to understand it, to basically get your head around that everything is already destined, and it's just we choose the paths that are already before us. Those paths already exist. Those paths are already in front of you. All of us have destinies that are already in front of us, and we get to choose the path that we take. And the better path is always the harder path. That's how it works, because the universe is always a paradox. It's always that type of law of opposites, and it works in that way. So when you understand that nothing happens by chance, and that this is a well-known law to Hermetics, you know, to the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Greeks, then you understand that this is something that is probably quite significant, and we should be paying attention to it, because I don't think that this Venezuelan situation is going to go away. It's only going to get uglier, and it is going to lead somewhere where we see probably a lot more escalation in conflict around the world, because let's not forget the Venezuelans have allies. China and Russia have a lot invested in Venezuela, and Mexico is also siding with Maduro. So just think about that when you think about how Trump is sending military men, the military, down to the border, down to the southern border, and why he wants the war. Does he really want it to keep out unarmed peasants? Or is there something else that he knows is coming and he wants to secure that southern border? Well, as I'm saying, it's just more information that we need to think about. Think outside of the box. Don't just listen to the rhetoric on CNN or Fox News. They're all the same. They're not different. They're all fake news, and not in the way that you think. It's not that they're reporting fake news. That's not how it is. It means that they're all following a narrative, and they're not telling you the full story. They're just giving you a little bit of the story. They're not telling you the complete picture. And so you're assuming something that's not true. That's what makes it fake. You've got to do more investigating. You've got to use your own intellect. You've got to do your own independent research. Do not depend on anybody, not even me, to tell you what to believe. Go and find out information for yourself and investigate everything for yourself. Just like I'll leave all of the links to everything I've shown you in this video underneath, and you can go and check it out further for yourself. And I would actually advise everyone to keep investigating, look further, continue on trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle for yourself, because that's the only way you're going to actually have a true understanding of what is happening. And this is how we gain wisdom. This is how we gain knowledge. We self-educate. When you're just listening to somebody tell you what to believe, you'll never really understand it to that point where it becomes knowledge and wisdom, and you know it for an actual, sure, without absolutely no doubt, and that's what you need to do. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. As I said, I'm sorry if I mixed up some words and I didn't exactly get that out in the most accurate way. I hope you pretty much got the gist of what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to put together here. I only just really found it all about, you know, a couple of hours ago, though I did see the escalation in Venezuela is quite interesting in relation to the lunar eclipse a few weeks ago or a week or so ago when it all started happening. I realized, hang on a minute, that was where the eclipse was visible. But just today when he said Cuba, and then I remembered I saw the center of the eclipse was over Cuba, and then I saw the Haitian stuff, and I started putting a few more dots together. I thought it was worth bringing to your attention. So I hope you found it interesting. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. And as always, peace out.